Well, we've had a lot of debut albums coming out this past couple of months, so yeah, let's dive in and see what these young whippersnappers have for us. Let's dive in. The Approbation by Arkwrust. I think that's how you pronounce it. They have a whole video on how to pronounce it, and I'm praying that bands stop using V's as U's, because my dyslexia reads that as, because of all the sharp edges and everything moving around and too many similar things. I read the band's name as Archivist, and I don't know why. I mean, the R and the K switch on over, and all the V's and what. It's a time. It's a time. I'll tell you that. So, Arkwrust, I think is how you pronounce it, Arkwrust, is a Norwegian progressive rock band. This is their debut album. Was founded by Martin Utby and Simon Bergseth. And they've been friends for pretty much ever, and they've been kind of jamming and playing tons of gigs, and then decided, okay, let's actually get down and do this. The overall flavor, I'm going to get to that first. A contemporary of mine, Rhyme Signature, had said that this is what Storm Corrosion should have been. The kind of conglomeration, the collaboration between Stephen Wilson from Porcupine Tree at the time and Michael Elkefelt from Opeth, coming together in the early 2010s. Like, I believe that album was released in 2012. Instead of, like, what we actually got, which I friggin' love, these two really big, bombastic, powerhouse metal and progressive rock bands putting out a experimental, impressionistic, very noise rock album was just like... and so... I feel as though Rhyme Signatures is quite right, and like, this is what people were expecting, and really this is what we would have been getting from like the late 2000s Porcupine Tree and Opeth. The albums basically from, say, In Absentia all the way to The Incident for the Porcupine Tree, and from I'd probably say about the Damnation Deliverance all the way to Watershed for Opeth. That kind of stretch within the catalog is, if you took both of those and like really smushed them together, this is what you would get with the Approbation. I've had this album for a while now, and I've spun it countless times, and the music is good, the music is great, but I don't feel myself really connecting all that much to it. And I've been racking my brain as to why. And I'm trying not to let my past expectations of prior bands cloud my judgment for what I'm currently listening to. Again, this is the first go, the baby bird taking its first flight, and the only thing that it knows is to mimic and, basically copy its mother and father. And I feel as though that's what these guys are doing. They're leaning so hard on their influences because they're still just learning how to walk. And so I don't want to basically say that these guys are leaning too hard, because I guess they are. But I wish that they were more ready to do their own thing, because as with a lot of the albums that I've basically said like this, because we've had a lot of records this year that falter and don't live up to their full expectation because they're leaning so heavily on their influences. When this album shines, they shine when they are doing their own thing. And that's one thing that I do love about this album. Like, there are certain moments that I love on this album because of what they're doing. Like, they're playing in that darker Porcupine Tree motifs with a little bit more of that Opeth sharpness, a little bit more of that Opeth bombasticness. And I'm loving the use of the Hammond B quite heavily on this. I'm loving the soundscapes that we have on a lot of the synthesizers and a lot of that overlay and textured sounds that we would get from like a Richard Barberi on here. But I'm also very cognizant of it sounding like Richard Barberi, to kind of like solidify, because I've been trying to figure out how to put this into words. It's kind of like when you are raised having only one type of fast food burger. We'll say that I'm used to eating only Wendy's burgers. You know, I love their big bacon. Somebody's like, yeah, this is really good. And this is kind of like what invented the fast food. And I know it's not, but using this metaphor, this is kind of what invented the fast food burger. And then we get a Burger King coming into town. And it's like, hey, you like burgers, try a Burger King. And I go over to the Burger King. And even if it's a quote unquote superior burger, it's like, well, I've already solidified my taste for the Biggie Bacon burger at Wendy's. The Whopper over at Burger King is a good burger, but I kind of prefer the Biggie Bacon, even if the Whopper's a really good burger. And I will go and have a Whopper whenever I want. But like, when I want a burger, I'm going to go for the Biggie Bacon. I'm not going to go for the Whopper. And I think that's kind of where I'm getting these kind of flavors. Like when I want to listen to the music that's being presented on the Approbation, I will listen to Fear of a Blank Planet, or I will listen to Ghost Reveries. I don't know if I will be reaching for this record when I've got those two records already at arm's length, at my beck and call. And I mean, that being said, I still really enjoy the music when it's being presented to. The track lengths are really good. I love the actual runtime on this album. Like, it's just under 50 minutes, and I think that's the perfect runtime for this. The album ends on two really stand out and big tracks of Anodyne and the title track of Approbation. I really do love where these tracks go as well. Like, The Pale Moon seems like the intersection between the Incident with that really big chug first note being like that dun 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 dun, but kind of being played in the sandbox that in Absentia really solidified and brought forth with some of their more atmospheric, very dark and sinister synth sounds on there. Isolation has a lot of those really like gutter and like intense aspects that we would have from some of the more Deliverance era Opeth, but again, intersection with the actual Damnation. Like, I'm hearing some soundscapes from Windowpane on this track. The Great Wide River has this really infectious groove to it. It's got this big like dun 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 dun. Like, it's got this like some of the late 2000s Steven Wilson, like very indie projects that he was doing, like with Efrat back in Israel, with that kind of like stylings on it, with like a lot of ebb and flow that we would have from some of the more smaller acts within the prog sphere, and taking that kind of essence with kind of like a Pineapple Thief, and I know Rhyme Signatures has made this comparison as well, but right into Arcane Clouds, where I'm hearing things from like Someone Here Is Missing from Pineapple Thief, or Tightly Unwound, like that kind of more airy, very more like jam session-y. Like it feels more like an early Porcupine Tree. And then finally we get to the final two tracks that I've already mentioned. Anodyne is like a really great build. It has a lot of those playing styles that I really loved from like a Heritage, and I feel like if they had gone more into the metal side into Heritage rather than more of that like jazz style into Heritage, this is kind of like the sounds that we would get. And then the final track of the title track of Approbation, it ends on a pretty high note. You know, it ends with a really good chug, it ends with a really good powerhouse, and I really do enjoy the styles on there. You know, the Mellotrons are really dripping on there. It's reminding me of some of my favorite moments from like Deadwing. At the end of the day, on surface value, and if you are listening to this record on an island in a vacuum, it's really friggin' good. You know, like as a debut album from a brand new band, they're playing at like peak Porcupine and peak Opeth. And that really needs to be applauded. That really does need to be applauded, because like if this is your first album out of the gates, you're really playing with fire. You know, you're really cooking hard here. It's just, nothing is written in a vacuum, and no man is an island in that sense. And so, again, I go back to that Biggie Bacon and Whopper analogy. If I want to listen to something like this, I'm going to turn to a Deadwing. I'm going to turn to a Fear of a Bleak Blank Planet. Blah. My mind always skips over that one and it's caught in a net. It's caught in a trap. Or I'll listen to the Ghost Reveries. I'll listen to a Deliverance. You know, I'll listen to a Watershed. This album is again, I feel as though if you've never listened to Porcupine Tree or Opeth, and you want to get into more of like a modern progressive rock, I think you're really going to love this record. And if you're a fan of Porcupine Tree, and if you're a fan of Opeth, and you've been craving that like late 2000s, early 2010s style of progressive rock, this is another album that you are going to love if you are craving more of the same in that sense. For me, what I loved about those albums were how innovative they were. What I loved about those albums is how they were pushing the music forward. And that is the essence that I want to hear in today's music. So I don't think I'm going to be returning to this one quite as much as a lot of other people. And I fully understand why people are loving this album. And this album really does deserve the praise that it's been getting. But for me, I don't know. I'm trapped between a rock and a hard place, because I recognize and I see the brilliance of this album, but I also see that it's not really my cup of tea, even though this album 10 years ago would have been my jam. 10 years ago, this would have been my favorite album. It's just we've had 10 years of musical progression since then. So, yeah, in the end, I will say the Approbation by Arc Rust is one that I would ultimately download. Like, there's enough on here to have it on your computer. There's enough on here to return to and, get back to it. But for me, I'm probably going to keep streaming it. I don't think I'm going to actually, invest too much into it. I really am excited to see where these guys go from here. And I really hope they are able to kind of flip up their stabilizers, flip up those training wheels, and really become the band that they were destined to be. Because I can see really, really great things for this band. And I'm so excited to hear what they have in store for us in the future. But that's all I've got. What did you guys think about the Approbation by, I'm going to try it one last time, Arc Rust? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, please let me know by commenting down below. Because that's all I've got for you guys today. So, with that, thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.